Call this meeting of the Union County Board of Adjustments for December the 11th, 2017 to order. Our first item on our agenda is determination of quorum, and we do have a quorum. Ms. Stewart is not here. That being the case, one of our alternates will have to step in and be a voting alternate, be an actual voter tonight. Ms. Witter, since you have never done that, we will give you that, and the next time there's an opening, it'll go to you. All right? So, let me introduce everyone. First of all, Mr. Sturgis is all the way at the end. He's the brain trust here, and he is our board attorney. Mr. Thornton, Mr. Tilley to right here, who are our board members. Mr. Tilley, vice chairman. Mr. Davis, Rick Davis, Mr. Amato, and Ms. Witters. We also have staff over there. Jim King, who is really the brain trust. I was kidding. I'm feeling festive today, so y'all, we have a very light crowd tonight, so I'm going to kid around a little bit, so y'all just hang in there. And we have a one-year staff member who is new to us, but we're welcome you, sir. I'll probably butcher your name. It's Bjorn Hansen, is that correct? That's correct. And you are a transportation planner for Union County. We welcome you to our meeting. Glad you, let's see, he's been everywhere but us. So if that tells you where we stand, I'm kidding. I know how it goes. We don't meet enough for you. You've probably been here before, but we never meet, seems like. But welcome everyone here tonight, and I'm glad to have you. I believe, let's see, looks like we have a discussion of a meeting date before we have the public hearing, but I think we're going to do the public hearing first. Is that okay?
That'd be fine.
Okay, we'll do the public hearing, then we'll talk about that for these folks, this big crowd we have, so they can go home if they want to. So first item on the agenda, we will do the special use permit 2017004 Marvin Town Center MTC Investors, requesting an amendment to an existing special use permit to allow for an additional 10,000 square feet of leasable and retail commercial space to be added to the existing Marvin Town Center development. At this time, I would ask that we determine any conflicts, and does anyone have a conflict with this case? Okay, hearing none. Mr. King, if you come forward, be sworn. You swear the evidence you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you, sir. Let you come around here. King, is the petition complete?
Yes, sir, it sure is.
Okay, this time I would ask for a motion to hear the petition.
Make a motion to hear this.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Thornton and a second by Mr. Davis. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, sir, you will give us your analysis, please.
All right, I'll make it very short and simple. This is special use is a request to amend a current special use. The amendments for additional 10,000 square foot of retail commercial space. The location is at 9815 Suzanne Court, and Riley Miller Properties is the applicant. Property owner is MTC Investments. The proposal here is the property is currently zoned PUD 6 B2. The applicant is requesting to construct up to, I apologize for my voice now, I got a little bit of a sinus cold going on. He's requesting up to 10,000 square foot of additional retail commercial space to increase the current 120,000 square foot, which is currently under the current special use permit and the PUD, up to 130,000 square foot of commercial retail space. The stipulations of the current PUD state that any change in the approved plan would require an amendment to both the special use plan or permit and the current amendment or current PUD that's in place today. This is given a geographic location of it. This is where Coles is located. As many of you probably remember, we've had two current special use permit amendments for two of the other quadrants to the Tom Short Ray Road intersection. First one was for Morning Star and the swim club. And most recent was for the old Walmart site, in which Riley Miller was before you at that time, asking for this use amendment. I do apologize for the slides. This is a template that all staff has got to use now as far as PowerPoint's presentations. It would not my particular choice, but so just to be in keeping with the rest of the county. This is showing the adjacent properties to the actual overall development. To the north, northwest, south, and southwest, you pretty much have got the PUD 6B2. Going to the northeast, east, and southeast, it has residential zoning of R20 R6 under the PUD. The conceptual site plan that was originally presented with the application shows a 5,000 square foot building pad. This is adjacent to the current dentist office that was built about 2.5 years ago. It is not showing the additional 5,000 square foot, which staff has made in their recommendations, something that they want to see as part of the special use amendment. The applicant is prepared to bring forth a new site plan, a conceptual site plan, that it does address that. We have talked throughout the application process, and I've given him a copy of the staff analysis, and he's indicated that he's going to be able to address all staff concerns tonight. So the staff's recommendations were that he needs to show where the additional 5,000 square foot is proposed, which he says he's prepared to do. The other thing that staff wanted to make sure that we don't infringe on, and that is the floodplain, so that no new development would be allowed in the regulated floodplain. That a detailed site plan shall be submitted and approved by all applicable agencies. The site plan shall fully comply with the existing PUD, or in this case, the amended PUD and the Union County Development Ordinance. Do want to point out that if the board does grant the amendment to the special use permit, he still has to go through the planning board and board of county commissioners to amend to PUD as well. So it's a two-step process. Continuing with staff recommendations, the site plan should comply with all local, state, and federal regulations. The TIA needs to reflect the additional proposed square footage, which the applicant has provided staff with a technical memo that has gone to NCDOT. And the PUD shall be amended by the Union County Board of Commissioners, which would be a requirement of the zone. So at this time, staff's giving a quick presentation. We're here for any questions that the board may have. And with that, if you have any questions, be happy to answer them. If not, turn it over to that.
Any questions?
I may have some after we see where the other 5,000 square foot's going.
Okay, perfect.
We can bring him back. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay, at this time, those who would like to speak in favor of the petition need to please come forward and be sworn. Okay, just you, sir. You swear the evidence you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Sir, please come forward, state your name.
Good evening, I'm Ken Orndorff. I'm with Rayleigh Miller Properties. I was here, as Jim said, 2 years ago for the SUP for the former Walmart site. And we've not started work there yet, but hopefully one day soon. On this project, let me give you just a quick overview. All right, so this, how can I get my, showing here is my, Are these shown on your monitors? So you can
Yes.
see? Okay. All right, so here you'll see Kohl's, CVS in the corner, some small retail. This is the Morning Star at the bottom of the page. Here, I'll zoom in, make it easier. This is the existing 5,000 square foot building now occupied by a dental office and a tutoring facility. This is the Ivy Brook Academy, a daycare, and I guess really technically more of a school. They do classes and it's not just daycare. We are proposing to add a 5,000 square foot twin building here on this parcel of, or patch of grass that will basically be a twin of this building. There may be some slight differences in design, but it's going to be designed to look almost exactly like this. The other 5,000 square feet is going to be reserved for potential expansion of the daycare center of the school. He is basically at capacity with his enrollment today. He's opened a new facility up in Charlotte, which has basically occupied his time and or capital, but he envisions a need in the future to expand his facility to meet his needs. So this would be one spot he could expand it, which is just now a parcel of grass. The second would be to add on to his existing building. Both of these represent approximately 5,000 square feet in area.
So which one would you be doing?
He can do either. I don't know which will meet his need at that point, if he wants to expand or if he needs a separate building for, if he wants to split his kids by age or something. It would be one or the other of these two is the plan. He doesn't have a plan to expand, but he envisions that he will need that at some point.
So are we looking at the 5,000 square feet being the green block as expansion, or the combination of the green and the purple block to be the
Maybe
5,000?
Green, certainly, that's a definite.
Okay.
One or the other of the purple, which I could certainly.
So 2,500 each or 5,000
It
each?
could be 5,000 in one, it could be 5,000 in the other, or it could be 2,000 in one, 3 in the other. Any combination of these could aggregate 5,000 square feet, just depending on what his need is. I don't know what it is today, nor does he, so I'm trying to reserve the right for him to do one or the other in the future. But the green area is the area that we have a definitive plan to build on that spot. So that would be just the purple as an either or combination. What I have here, and I'll introduce this, Jim, is Exhibit A. This is a letter from the Hunter Oaks HOA Board of Directors in support of this amendment. I met with the board members. We've talked a lot about being neighbors and what that means in terms of connectivity, access. There's a group there that wants connectivity between the neighborhood and the commercial center in a pedestrian fashion. There's a group who doesn't, so we haven't fully determined what shape that might take, but for now, we're not planning on a full connection to the neighborhood. There's people who just oppose it for one reason or another, so.
Mr. Orndorff, just so you'll know, we'll accept this, but the board will give it little or no weight. Even if it was an affidavit, the board would give it little or no weight, and it's not even affidavit. So this is not evidence that's really allowed in a quasi judicial hearing. I'm not really sure it affects the things you really need to prove to start with, but the board will accept it, but give little or no weight to it.
Okay. Item 2, I would introduce, Exhibit 2, is a technical memorandum regarding the traffic impacts associated with the proposed additional 10,000 square feet. In summary, that says that the impact to traffic of adding 10,000 square feet to this development are virtually negligible. Talking, it will reduce traffic by 7 cars in the PM peak hour, and increase traffic, or excuse me, the net increase in the PM traffic, or decrease in the PM traffic would be 15 cars. The net increase in the AM traffic would be 22, for a net peak change of 7 cars per day.
Could you explain what you're saying there and how you're arriving at that?
Typically, the DOT, Bjorn may be better equipped to explain it. DOT looks at peak hour trip generation. So AM peak is 8 to 9 AM, or an hour in the AM peak, and an hour in the PM peak. In the morning, this will generate 22 more cars than the existing shopping center. In the afternoon hour, it will generate 15 less trips in the afternoon peak. So
Now, how are you determining that?
based on the uses, they model the existing center, and what it should generate or what it can generate. They take the additional 10,000 square feet with the assumption that it's office and or daycare, and they model what that will generate and compare the two.
Could we get Bjorn sworn since he's here? He can bring us some insight on this. All right, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, if you could just come to the podium. Is it all right if I do this to just clarify that, sir?
That's fine.
I just want an understanding of, because it seems strange to me that adding something decreases traffic.
That's what doesn't make sense,
Okay.
when it's gonna be a school.
Well, I don't know, this is just,
Well, I know, but he's
and we don't know
getting
what
them both
this,
at the
we don't
same
know what
time.
this is gonna be, but, anyway, go ahead.
All right.
Could you explain traffic studies to me?
Sure. Traffic studies, and I was actually talking about this before with Ken before we actually had the meeting. We're talking about the real world, which is what traffic generation and behaviors and any kind of congestion or safety concerns are actually happening based on what's occurring at the site here and now versus what models would show based on typical land uses and the trip generation based on those bundle of uses. There was a study done in 2010 based on a bundle of uses that were split out. So you had the Kohl's versus the CVS versus the Child Care Center versus some other out parcels. And those were both aggregated up and you had X amount of traffic. DOT has had a paradigm shift in how they want a site like this evaluated. They didn't want the site broken out into all these uses. They wanted it in this umbrella land use of shopping center. There's pluses and minuses to doing that. So they had this calculation of the shopping center. If you had the 120,000 square feet currently permitted and the trip generation rate calculated that way versus all the individual uses, there's a difference. And the initial scenario from 2010 with all the individual uses versus the current scenario with 10,000 square feet additional commercial added of just some general shopping center does show a slight decrease. Of course, in the real world, that's not going to be the case. It will have an increase. We can't say what it's going to be because the uses haven't been determined.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Anything?
I got a question, if you don't mind. From what I understand, we're looking at approving the additional 5,000 in the green, and also the additional 5,000 combination where the two purples are. So you're saying the two purples will be part of the school, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. How are these people gonna get back and forth to the school if it doesn't generate traffic with the parents bringing them to school?
They do.
But you're saying it's only gonna increase like 20 cars?
In the AM peak hour, these are some technical things that I don't fully understand. In the AM peak hour, they will generate 22 more cars based on these uses. Office building or professional office building with medical uses and a daycare / school facility. In the PM peak hour, most of the office people are gone or have gone by then. They don't generate hardly any PM peak. And the school lets out at 4. They don't generate any PM peak traffic. So the PM peak is actually decreasing.
But these businesses are still operating till 5 o'clock, aren't they?
Well, the medical office would, but the daycare is gone. They're gone by 4:15. They don't operate at 5.
I guess that's what I'm saying. The dental offices, all these retail and businesses are still there.
They are.
So you got the parents bringing their kids to the daycare of a morning. They gotta come back that afternoon to pick them up while the dentist office is still there at 5 o'clock.
And they come
That's
before 5.
confusing.
They're finished. They're finished with their pickup by 4:30.
Yeah, but the dentist office is still operating. isn't
That
it?
is true.
So,
When you add the dentist into the overall center versus a retail use, it generates less because they leave at 5. They do not continue to leave at 6 and 7. They, I guess, the way the model works is they are pretty much out shortly after 5 based on that use. So you don't see a major change in the P&P. You actually see a decrease because the medical office generates less than a retail.
okay, it just seems to me the dentist office is operating in the morning, they're bringing the kids to the daycare.
Yes.
The dentist office is still operating at 4 o'clock, the parents come back to pick up their kids at 4 o'clock. So I don't see how you're decreasing, maybe I'm totally confused.
That's not the
Right, here's
measuring
the
hour.
thing.
It's a
Here's the way
specific time period they measure.
Right.
Okay,
So
that-
if you're
okay.
going after 5 o'clock, and then
You're
what they
saying
judge it
specific.
by is if you would put retail in that spot
Right.
versus what they're putting in the
So
spot.
it'll be open till 9 PM. pretty much.
Right.
I see what
So
you're saying.
this entire part of the whole shopping center will basically be closed after 5, and so there'll be no traffic over here.
I see what you're saying,
So-
okay.
If it were a grocery store or a Kohl's, yeah, they generate, that's their peak. They generate a lot of traffic between 5 and 7. These uses generally virtually none between the 5 and 7 peak hour in the afternoon.
I see what
More
you're
in the
saying.
morning,
Okay.
and less in the afternoon.
Yeah, I understand now. In the beginning, it was weird.
Or as around. I wish
just
I
figured
was
something
better
there,
equipped
so
to,
I'll pick 'em up.
Appreciate you explaining too
Yeah.
the
Thank you.
change in,
thankfully, we had an expert here.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, that's
So,
good.
introduce that. The next thing, and we talked about this a little bit, is the stormwater system. I want to make sure that adding more rooftops, parking spaces, whatever might be added, we're not really adding any parking. We might add a couple of spaces right here, but it would be like 4 to 5. But that would not trip our stormwater management system into something that would not handle that water. So I have my engineer, and I'll introduce this, do a study based on the design of the stormwater system compared to adding the 10,000 square feet. And he says that the pond has adequate capacity to handle the increased runoff from the additional space.
Where's the catch basin in this picture?
It's a linear wet pond. It goes basically, I'll see how to get, doesn't show very well. It's a regional pond that handles all of this development, and it runs from basically here along the back of these buildings, the parking lot, all the way back to roughly the top of the page. But it's a linear master retention system, and it catches everything from this project. And what the engineer says is adding this impervious surface is not going to create a non-conforming stormwater system for us.
So it basically works more like absorbing the water into the land in a long length than it does just standing water.
It has a pond pretty much all the time unless there's a drought. But when the water rises, it will release that into the creek. If not, it will hold it and let it infiltrate.
Where's that creek? I remember that being brought up one other time before.
Basically runs parallel with it. It starts back here. It's almost a bridge. It has a little bit of water that runs, but it's not significant. It runs along parallel and then goes underneath Ray Road somewhere in here. And I can't tell you where it goes from there, but it runs underneath.
So we're saying the additional 10,000 square feet here is not going to affect this at all, because I mean, that was the issue that was brought up last time. This was brought here, was the neighbors saying that, it does create more water.
It does. Our pond, thankfully, was designed originally to handle more impervious. So it may mean that we, through the development of this, have less developed surface than was originally intended. So that thing has been over-designed to the extent that it will handle this additional space based on the engineering calculations. The next thing I'll introduce,
Well, before you go, can I ask you one more question?
Yes, sir.
Can you go back up there where the purple buildings are? So all the parking area that's around up there will suffice for the parking areas that's needed or required for these buildings?
I cannot tell you that. I don't know if they're gonna, if they add 2,000 square feet, they may have to add 3 parking spaces. If they add all 5,000 square feet, they may have to add some other number of parking, which may limit how much space of that 5,000 they can build. So until they know what they're gonna do, I don't know the code for daycare, if they have room left.
Is that something that you'd have control over, Mr. King? Okay, sure.
When they come back in, I think they'll have to get a plan review. If they choose to expand, they'll have to go through plan review, meet the ordinances, parking and all the other setbacks.
Thank you.
Next one addresses property values. I believe that's one of the conditions of the findings of fact, is that this development will not substantially change or impact the property values in the area. Introduce this.
Okay, and Ken, may I interrupt you too? Do you have updated or revised concept plan that you can submit as this as well? Keep on referring.
It matches this.
Yep. This is what you keep on referring to, so I want to make sure we have that together this as well.
This is Exhibit 4, which is the appraiser's letter.
Is that like exhibit number on it?
It does, it's got 8.
8, okay.
I just
We'll get there eventually.
Basic concept of the appraiser study is generally the same theory as the traffic. The addition of this 10,000 square feet of commercial space, an existing commercial center, will have virtually no impact on adjacent property values. She's based that on studies she's done in the past for this site and the site across the street, where the addition of commercial space actually translated to higher property values for the surrounding properties than for properties that are further away or interior to the neighborhood than the ones directly abutting the project. That's what I think some of her backup and documentation shows, is that the addition to the space will have no impact, virtually no impact on property values adjoining us. All right. These, Jim, I'll introduce all at the same time. These are first one is photos of the existing building, which is the white roof next to the green. That is the original architectural plan for that building, the existing. This is the architectural plan for the new building, the green. These will show you, I can pull them up here. That's the existing building. I'll show it all on that one. Beautiful lighting. Hopefully you can see it on the screen. I've got a few photos of that building in its existing condition. The new building in green will virtually match that building in terms of design, materials, architectural styles, whatever. We do have a tenant or a prospect who is committed to lease 80% of this building. It's a pediatric dentist, which would be a complementary use to the family dentist we have in this building, which would leave me roughly 15-20% of the building left to lease to another prospect. Don't have that prospect in hand yet.
Now, that's on the one that's in the green.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's basically what I have to present. I'm happy to answer questions.
I want you to go back to the one with the green and the pink.
Yes, sir.
Zoom in on the purple, pink, whatever it is. There you go. Now I want to get this straight. The daycare has no idea if they want to expand right now or not.
He has no timetable for expansion. He needs it-
Okay,
he needed it.
so he's not got no plans to build right now.
Correct.
Well, that's
That's
all
what my
I'm-
concern
Well-
is we're looking at two different buildings. We know the green building is 80% leased, the pink or the purple, we don't know what it's gonna be or where, if it's gonna go there. I've got a concern with that. Cause you're saying that you're not sure if the guy wants to expand or not. He's got the potential to do it, but then we're looking at permitting two buildings to possibly be built, not knowing what it's gonna be. Could be a school, could be 20% here, could be 30% there. I've got a problem with that. I mean, I can understand doing the one 5,000 since it's already got a purpose for it. But it's like we're approving something that we don't even have a purpose for.
Yep.
Are you comfortable with that, Mr. King?
Well, one thing that the board can do is they can put stipulations down. You can stipulate that the use that's shown up in the purple can only be for that school. And if it's anything else, then he's got to come back before the board for an amendment to the special use permit again. So there's some options the board does have.
The reason I'm including that in this one is there is a stated desire to expand, no timetable, no current plans. Instead of coming back again to do this all over, my goal was to reserve him options to expand his facility. I'm happy to limit it to his facility. I don't want an ice cream shop or something else. Was to eliminate coming back before you again in 2 years, 5 years, and asking for another 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 square feet, is to basically limit it to these areas, to this use, and tell you that if and when he chooses to expand, it must be consistent with this plan.
And our plan, our review is primarily the square footage. That is what the amendment to the special use is. And we typically, when we are dealing with square feet, we do typically deal with locations, which he is providing. And those are the, from a land use perspective, are primarily things we're involved in. And of course, sometimes use itself, and so he's restricting it to that. So,
Are you comfortable with it?
yeah, for the things that we regulate,
Okay, that's good.
it seems to meet, enough has been provided to do that. And it is a lot of expense to go through this whole process again, because he has to go to the board commissioner, go through the planning review process. That's a fair amount of time and money. So it seems to me a logical way to do it, and it probably meets our requirements. And, Jim's suggestions as to the restriction or conditions that you were wondering about, they make a lot of sense to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Do we know, since this is a addition, did we have any conditions set on the last approval?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Since this is an addition, did we have any conditions set on the previous approval?
Not that I'm aware of.
You mean,
The original plan, if I'm not mistaken, showed the dentist office and the daycare as out parcels. Is that correct? Then you had, what, 1 or 2 out parcels on the frontage and then Coles. And it came through as a development of itself. What has happened is over time, some of those out parcels have been sold, and Riley Miller only owns 3 of those parcels now, correct?
we own we own Starbucks and the Mattress Firm. We own this set of buildings. We own, this is a single parcel with the 2 buildings on it. And then the Kohl's owns its own parcel. Someone else owns the CVS. The daycare operator owns his parcel. And there is a community-owned parcel, which is owned by the Property Owners Association, which is our detention system. So we, Rayleigh Miller, only own two lots of this project.
Yeah, so what is built out came in as a single project. What he's asking now is to add to the previously approved special use permit and PUD amendment to allow additional square footage, because all that was originally allowed was up to 120,000 square foot, and they maxed out that 120,000 square foot. What happened was under the old ordinance and the new ordinance changed with the retail allotment and this and that. The PUD amendment had been made because under the original PUD amendment, it was a total of 400,000 square foot for all 4 quadrants. Is that correct?
I can't remember exactly, but each B2 district had a maximum of 120,000 square feet.
Correct.
So each parcel was 120. The new ordinance lifted that
Right.
density maximum, and now there is none. You just meet the ordinance requirements. So
That's correct. So with his first request for the old Walmart site, they went from 120,000 square foot up to 240,000 square foot. The Board of County Commissioners did amend the PUD to reflect that. Same thing with the opposing quadrant from this where Morningstar is and the swim club. They came in and they exceeded the 120,000 square foot as well. Not by much, but by a little bit. The board did grant the special use permit for that, and the county commissioners did amend the PUD for that one as well. With my perception with the current proposal before you, we know that there is a defined 5,000 square foot building that he wants to build. As far as the purple representation, and I was the one because Ken was not sure if it would be in that middle section of the parking lot or if it would be onto the side of the building. But I talked with staff, and staff suggested just go ahead and show both locations. And the way that we would characterize it is he's allowed up to 5,000 square foot for the daycare use only.
Now, let me ask you a question. The guy that owns the daycare. So let's just say he sells the daycare building and somebody else comes in. And it's not a daycare.
They can't expand.
Okay. All right.
Assuming you put that condition on, which we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, they can change the use of the current building, but they would not be able to expand the use because the expansion's only for a daycare. Or for the
expansion of the existing operation or business, whether you call it school, daycare.
Right.
That, whatever his use is categorized as, would be the only expansion available.
I'm good with that.
Well,
I'm good with that,
the use
yeah.
stays with the permit, so.
That's correct, and the permit runs for the land
for-
perpetually.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't look like there's adequate parking there for the additional purple buildings. If we approve the additional square footage there, do we then need to approve additional land for parking?
Well, here's this part of one of the staff's recommendations, and the staff analysis is that a detailed site plan must be submitted, and it must comply with all the rules and regulations of the development ordinance for Union County. If they propose a building and they can't park it, then they're going to have to reduce the size of the building in order to comply with the development ordinance. So he's still going through this process. He's still going to have to go through another process to get the actual building built. So if he can't provide adequate parking, then he's not going to be able to build that size building.
There is a formula, so.
That is correct.
it's, based on the size. And so
So
once
size
he
of-
comes through and he wants 5,000, if that formula says he needs 4 more parking spaces, he's gotta find those, they gotta work with the whole process, or he can't do it.
He's got,
gonna
it's a
have to build
balancing act. He's got to
4,500
balance it
square
out.
foot
Balance
building.
it out.
Right.
My guess, and just it's worth what you pay for it, is that he would expand next to the expand the building into the purple next to the building. And if he had to add parking, it would go where the other purple spot is, because that's where, really the only place he could efficiently add parking. I mean, I just don't see the ability for him to add a building there, if he needs more parking, and then find another place for his parking. I think he has to go probably with this area and create more parking here if he needs it. But
So we're protected through those,
That review process.
that's good.
That answer your question, everybody?
It does.
Anybody else? Okay. Everybody still pondering, or y'all? Mark,
good.
you-
I'm good.
I can't tell with you, Mark, you look like you, I just wanna make sure. All right, anyone else like to speak in favor of the petition? Okay, and at this time, anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the petition? Okay, all right, I don't see any. Anything else y'all need answered? Any questions before I close the hearing? This will be your opportunity to do that. Anything, sir? Mr. Attorney,
No, nothing.
are you good? Feel good?
Good for y'all to close the hearing and proceed on.
All right, this time the hearing is closed. All right. We will now need to look at each of the 5 questions. It's a complicated process, so everybody hang on. All right, number 1, the proposed use and development comply with all regulations and standards generally applicable with the zoning district and specifically applicable to the particular type of use. Comments?
I believe it does. I don't think it's changing anything. He's just adding a couple buildings in existing complex. So I think it probably is in compliance.
Well, also, I think the zoning administrator testified that it was, and then possibly another finding of fact is that they do have to come back for a site approval and would address any, requirements that were needed at that time based upon what they did.
All right, anything else? Okay, if all those in favor that the question is met, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 2, the proposed development will not materially endanger the public health or safety. We've already approved a special use permit here, and I don't think adding 10,000 square feet is gonna,
You might
traffic study
add,
indicated,
you might add as a finding of fact that stormwater needs are met.
stormwater needs are met. Also, traffic study indicated that, there was no major impact on traffic. Anything else you wanna add on that one? You getting all this, Mr. King? You're the one's gonna have to write this thing.
Yeah, I'm working on it right now.
Okay, all in favor of item number 2, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 3, proposed development will not substantially injure the property, the value of the abutting property, or is a public necessity. I don't think we have anything to show. We're adding 10,000 square feet. We do have a report that was submitted, but I don't know if we can really use that.
Yeah, let me talk about that just for a minute.
Yeah.
It does bother me that we get reports sometimes without testimony.
Right.
But, this is, the purpose of requiring live testimony so someone can cross-examine.
No one here to
Since there's
oppose it.
no opposition to cross-examine, it's less
Less
of a
important.
concern. And it is a kind of thing prepared in the normal course of building business too. So it's not something that just strikes us as, well, this is odd.
Right.
So,
I agree.
I think you can give some weight to it.
I agree.
Well, I took the advice of my attorney, I didn't look at it.
Now, that was the one statement from the neighbors.
Oh, okay.
All right. So we're good with that one. Item number 3, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And number 4, the proposed development will be in harmony with the area in which it's located. Basically, we're just adding, again, 10,000 square feet that matches pretty much what's already there. They're not adding a used car lot or anything that's odd to that property. So, everybody okay with that one?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the last one, the proposed development will be in general conformity with the comprehensive plan. I think that's obvious at this stage. Are we good? We need to really say anything about that? I mean, he wouldn't be here if it wasn't, probably, so.
Right, yeah, the comprehensive plan calls for commercial in this area, and this is
Right.
commercial.
Exactly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, at this time I will entertain a motion
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve with the stipulation. The 5,000 square foot designated for a medical facility or whatever that is. Allowed as is, as submitted. And then the other 5,000 total square foot can only be used for the existing school/daycare that is already there.
Do y'all want other conditions also? I think the zoning administrator had mentioned a few.
Do you know of any more we need to add?
Staff recommendations.
Yeah, you can just staff recommendations.
Just follow staff recommendation on all other parts of it.
And we would anticipate that those would be specifically listed in the permit, not just a reference to the recommendation.
Okay. You got that? I'm not gonna make you restate it. Did everybody get the motion? Everybody understand the motion? Okay. All right, is there a second?
I'll say.
Okay, Mr. Davis seconds. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, sir. All right. Item B, discuss setting a date for training session in early 2018.
That rules out of pool party earlier.
Mr. Sturgis, this recommendation was made that we do it at Mr. Tilley's house at his pool, but that would not
Boy,
work.
I like that.
Would not work in early 2018 probably would not
Mr.
suffice.
Sturgis might have a heated pool.
Mr. Sturgis, do you have a heated pool?
I don't got no pool, heated or cold, unless my backyard floods. Does that
Anybody have a
count?
heated pool?
Well, I guess we could warm some,
I get
rocks
them.
up and put in mine.
Everybody seems to be bored with this facility. Is it you just don't have it here? Or you can have it somewhere else if you are bored with this place. But
Texas Roadhouse.
technically, this is kind of where we're set up to do it.
No, this is
So
good for me.
I'm good with it. I like a pool. I do. But, I mean, we could just do a retreat to the beach. I mean, you don't really want to make this. Let's see if the county will pay for that. And hey,
Second that motion.
I like your idea there.
I was there this weekend, didn't even see the ocean.
Typically, what
Still
we
there,
do
bro.
for the workshops is staff will prepare or provide supper for everybody,
But not a hotel at the beach.
not a hotel. That's good.
Well, next year when they'll be doing budgets soon, let's see if we can work on that. I mean, we are, aren't highly compensated, and we do.
And
give a lot
very
of time.
hard worked.
And it's difficult work at times. At times it is difficult work and very stressful. I know Mr. Tilley sometimes he just, I know he's stressed when he's doing that. And he needs compensation for that. So anyway, a date, I suppose, and then we'll let you guys decide how you want to treat us and train us.
What is your recommendation on the date, Mr. King?
I'm thinking probably maybe the February meeting date.
We don't know if we're gonna have any items on February meeting day.
Right, and we're very quickly coming to the deadline.
No, you come to deadline for the January one, right?
January's coming down.
So,
It's 45 days prior to the
when does
meeting
this
of the
happen?
deadline.
That's awesome. So we're not meeting in January.
Yeah, we got January off.
So in case it snows, we don't have to worry
Right.
about being here.
That's right.
I like that, or me calling y'all
Snow in
cancel.
January, it only snows in March.
Yeah, but we get more snow in February. than we
Well, I
do
know that's
January.
true, but if,
February meeting
so,
would be good.
February meeting work for everybody? I don't know what that date is.
That's
but
February 12th.
February the 12th. If it was the 14th, it could definitely have some concerns.
Yes.
Given us the 12th, it might pass. But is that the President's Day weekend?
It's Lincoln's birthday, But I don't think that's President's Day. I think Lincoln's birthday and President's Day is different, I
County
think.
closed on President's Day?
President's Day is the 19th.
Okay, we're good then.
Apparently,
No, 'cause
apparently Mr. Lincoln didn't count as a president.
Lincoln didn't count. He was not qualified. They didn't start till like the 20th. President. He was what? 16? What was he? Anyway, so we're talking about the the 12th. Is that good? We will establish a training meeting on the 12th, whether we have, now if we have an item come up, is that gonna cause issues?
We will schedule around it.
Okay, what if it's a big item? And there ain't
Maybe a
no.
big item that has to wait.
Well, here's what we'll do, we'll plan for that night, but if we have a major item come up and time's constraint, we'll hold off on the training, cause we can't.
Okay.
Unless, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Cause if we're sitting here at 9:30 still talking about some, special use permit, we're not gonna train after that.
Unless the box dinner's already here.
Unless we're using that as a training session part, yeah. Well, we'll just do that. All right, so that's the training. Anything else we need to talk about? Everybody happy?
Well, let me ask you, you know,
Sir.
and some of y'all, obviously, a bunch of y'all have been to several training sessions over time. Is there anything particular you're interested in? I know standing was pretty darn exciting last time. It's one of my favorite topics. But didn't know if there anything that y'all are more interested in, you know, in regard to evidence you consider, variances. We do a lot of special use permits. We don't get very many variances. Appeals, we don't get many of those.
We don't
whether-
do any of those. We always need to know how to handle those.
Yes, we
Right.
do.
And maybe we're out of practice with appeals and variances, maybe you want to focus on that. Just in, I mean, I can do very similar to what I did before, but if there are some things y'all are more interested in, or, you know, thought it'd be helpful to brush up on, because we don't do them. So any guidance you want to give me, shoot.
I would like to touch just a little bit and give us a little bit, just like what we did tonight, where we put a stipulation on that last 5,000 square foot.
Okay, stipulations?
Yeah,
When it's reasonable, when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Something else that I was thinking about, and this has popped up at least twice in the past 2 meetings, and that is, when is something considered hearsay and when can
Yeah.
they consider it as being evidence?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that came to my mind tonight was, and I'm glad Bjorn showed up, Ken was in no position to really speak about transportation or the TIA because he's not an expert in that area. Thank God Bjorn was, so he could speak to it. Otherwise, really what Ken was having to say was based on a memo that his engineer was not here to present.
Right. Yeah, I can kind of touch on that topic more. I mean, that kind of concerned me too, that he didn't have any expert witnesses on it. You know, traffic flow was not a, I mean, when he could talk about, you know, no, and that was kind of under safety, you know, the safety aspect. I mean, he doesn't have to prove that. That's not a requirement for us to grant a special use permit, whether there's more traffic or less traffic. You know, the question is it created, you know, an unsafe condition, which we could probably conclude by looking at the, you know, the site plan itself. But if some opposition had showed up and said, well, there's a real safety concerning traffic flow here if you put it there, I think he probably would have been in trouble. But I think that's a good topic because, you know, we're exercising judgment, and it maybe sometimes doesn't seem like my advice is consistent. I think it generally is, and I'm just kind of applying some practicality to a quasi-judicial board, because, you know, I've raised fusses at times about people having these land, no, you know, impact on the neighboring values of land. And sometimes we've kind of let a report in like we did tonight, and sometimes we've been more strict on it. And generally when we're more strict on it is when there's opposition and someone should need the opportunity to cross-examine. But I think it'd be a good discussion. I'd like that.
I think if tonight there'd have been a lot of people here in opposition, there'd have been a big issue.
I think you're right.
He didn't have anything to back up anything he brought. I mean,
Mhm.
but there was no.
That's what was concerning me, is the information he was giving us was it something that we could use, or is it just general information?
Right.
Could it be evidence or just general information?
Well, it's evidence, he's sworn. I mean, it's for you to weigh the value of the evidence. Does it persuade you or not persuade you? You know, and the fact that it's, quote, not his firsthand observation, you know, obviously weakens the value, but even have weak value, you're comparing it to no evidence on the other side. But at some point, you as a board could say, well, look, that evidence is so weak, I don't care if there's nobody in opposition. You know, this does not meet our land use requirements. Just because somebody didn't show up, that doesn't determine what we decide.
Something else that might be helpful also is if you can maybe look at some case law that's out there or some other Board of Adjustment cases that have gone. Give this board a scenario based on case law, see how they react, and then tell them what the courts said and how the courts reacted to it.
I don't do well on tests.
Well, you can hide behind the other people there.
Copy from Mark's paper.
No, don't copy from mine. Last time I got told I'd make a bad attorney.
Thank goodness. Otherwise, I wouldn't have anything to do here.
That's right. Sounds good to
I
me.
think also the guidelines on stipulations, because, you know, just as I think Mark had said, what if the daycare center owner sells the property and the square footage is then restricted to whoever purchases that building?
Well, but so you know, so if the next purchaser is a daycare center too, then he could probably use this special use permit. If it's not, and he creates something else and he wants more square footage, he's not prohibited. He has to come back and say, I want an amendment to the special use permit.
Okay.
And the purpose of that is so, you know, in our review of it, we were considering the use, and that seemed reasonable, you know, not too much impact on the neighbors and that sort of thing. Now, if a guy wants to come back and do something else, he just presents the evidence. We may conclude what he wants to do does not impact from a land use perspective, and we approve it. But he's not prohibited from doing anything other than daycare. He's just got to go through the process.
I've always been concerned about the stipulations. When do they really apply?
Well, the way they apply is, and actually we really use the term conditions is the legal term that's kind of associated with it. They're conditions placed upon the permit. And so they apply, it really is almost like it becomes part of our zoning ordinance.
Okay.
And it's for that particular piece of land. So the enforcement is like any zoning violation. Normally someone makes a complaint to the zoning administrator, or the zoning administrator makes it known. Then the zoning administrator says, you're in violation of a condition to your special use permit, therefore you are not in complying with zoning. And then the zoning administrator has a variety of remedies it can take. It doesn't come back to the board as a general rule. I guess the zoning administrator, as one, you may have to correct me on this because I hadn't done this for a long time. The zoning administrator, one remedy could be to, I want to revoke your special use permit because you're out of compliance. Now, I would assume that would come back to the board.
Come back to the board in the form of an appeal. Or,
Right, because you would probably revoke it
Yeah.
as your administrative authority, and
to
they
give you
may
another
appeal.
example of, say somebody was in violation of a special use permit. And now I went out there, I might be a little bit uncomfortable with, is this really a violation of their intent? Is it not a violation of the intent of the board? So what I may do is I may bring it back to the board to make an interpretation. What was your true intent of these conditions, and are they in violation of them or are they not?
Yeah, I don't know whether I'd let you do that. I would probably, I know we talked about, it's been a long time since we talked about this. I think we decided that we are not to give administrative opinions on, but you would have to rule it's in violation or not, and someone would have to appeal that.
Right.
As opposed to you just bringing the, so you have to go out on the limb, and then someone else has to appeal you. It could be the neighbors who think they are in violation. You say they aren't in violation, neighbors say, I think I am, I appeal.
One of the things about conditions I'd like for you to talk about is, do we need to be more specific? As in, okay, we require you to have a berm here. Do we need to also say we require you to then maintain that berm, or is it assumed you're gonna maintain that berm? I don't know. I'm not.
I think about,
You know what I'm talking about.
if I ever do a berm again, it will be in there, a berm of such and such a size and properly maintained.
Mowed on weekly, I mean.
But do we have the authority to give sizes to them?
Say
Well,
whatever
there-
we want to,
Well,
the board
I
does.
think-
Now, let me stop you right here real quick.
That's a good example.
We wanna make sure, one, that any condition that is imposed is a reasonable condition. Two, we wanna make sure it's enforceable. So I'm not gonna go out there every week and see if they mowed that berm. So that's gonna be really hard to enforce. And if somebody's calling and complaining about it every week, it's gonna put staff in a position where we're not able to
Hiring a
address it.
staff person just to help. But my concern is, we clearly have an example we're all aware of where apparently it's not being maintained, and that's very frustrating that you.
Well, I think the person can complain to the zoning administrator, you know, and then it's his bailiwick whether to take some form of enforcement action, you know, and.
Well, my point is though, do we need to specifically give him?
I think we have to be careful about that because, you know, the ordinance, you know, provides for different types of screening and that sort of classes of screening.
Mhm.
And so I would think the condition would be, this has to be a Class A screen. We wouldn't say this has to be a Class A screen and you have to add 40 more bushes than a Class A screen calls for. I think that would be not unheard of, I think unusual in that the ordinance has kind of established different levels of screening. We can decide it should be an A, B, or C. I don't think we should decide it should be a B++. I'm not saying it's
Yeah,
impossible, but
That wasn't the problem. The problem was, there wasn't an issue with what was required of the berm and what type it was.
right.
The issue was, everything they put on the berm died.
Well, now, and that we can address, if it, and, I do believe Bill Smith, our arborist, went out there and looked at that. And they're gonna, he's gonna tell them that when the growing season comes, whatever died has got to be replanted. Because.
Yeah, I think that's all we're saying.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
it's a
we'll do that.
required planting and it dies, we're gonna hold them to that and put something back else in its place. On the other hand, where the complaint came was where it was overgrown, we're not gonna say that, okay, you have all your required plantings, but your grass is getting tall between there. It's still being effective, it's screening what's behind it. We're not into beautification.
Right, I agree with that. I mean, if it's overgrown, that's a screen.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the dead stuff needs to go.
What kind of time frame could you put on the berm? Say you've got to put 10 bushes for the Class A screening, but it's
Typically,
got to last for 10 years.
No, it's gotta last, what I tell them is this gotta last indefinitely, as long as the project's there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when they turn in a site plan, I get them to put all vegetation that is planted will be maintained from the time of planting indefinitely.
Okay, that's good.
No, that's good. As long as dead stuff's being replaced.
Yeah,
I
so
guess
that's, and again, it's up to your neighbors being the helpful eyes, and when they bring it to our attention, then we can go out there and address it.
And after that, I always felt like I wanted to put everything in our conditions that they stated in the testimony that they were gonna do this, that, and the other. I just felt like I needed that.
There's certain areas we didn't
I
have to
just-
start doing that.
I just felt like on those particular ones, it's just like, wish we'd had it in there.
And some we can and some we can't. You know, there's some, if it's not a land use related condition, as opposed to a promise, you know, to, you know, not have a lot of people come and visit the site or, you know, or tour
Well-
groups or something, maybe it's a,
I'm like this. If they get up here and tell us that they're gonna put an anti-flying saucer device in there to keep aliens out, it better go in there.
Yeah, okay.
That's
Well, we're
national
gonna go ahead.
security.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn, second.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Uh,